Gomes. If you don't know me, I have a team in real estate. Eklund Gomes, my business partner, and I, Frederick Eklund, started the team. Oh God, I think it was going back 12 or 13 years ago. I am a biracial man. A lot of people ask me that question. They've asked me that question actually throughout my entire life. People really can't quite figure me out, which I think is a good thing. More recently, as this whole Black Lives Matter has come into our lives, people have been very curious about my race. And I've received lots of telephone calls from many reporters from different newspapers asking me the same, because people are looking for a voice and somebody who has experience from, a Black experience, if you will, albeit my skin be light. I will tell you that my father's skin is very Black. My mother's skin is very white. I'm proud of both of my parents, and I am proud of my heritage. I do want to be brutally honest with you at the onset of today's seminar, which is really kicking off the next 8 weeks, which is going to culminate with a rally for Black Lives Matter that's going to happen in Washington, D.C. I do want to be honest and admit a couple of things. And one of those things is as a biracial man today, I look back on my life as a younger boy. I was raised in Boston. Later, my family moved to Rhode Island. I often lived in upper middle class white neighborhoods. I went to a private Catholic school. In many ways, I had a certain privilege. And I'm ashamed to admit to all of you, and it is true, as a biracial man today, I am proud of my heritage, as I said. However, I was not as proud of my heritage earlier on in my life. And quite frankly, that had a lot to do with the areas where I lived and the social situations that I had to endure. And because my skin is light, there is a term called living in passing. I lived in passing. I lived my youth, in my mind, as a white person, because it was more convenient for me to do that, because I didn't want to be subjected to the racism that I knew existed in the world that I lived in. And I have a dad, as I said, who's Black, who I didn't really allow to really come around, not to any of my school events, not to any of my sporting events. I really sort of tried to hide him, quite frankly. And as a result, I just had my mother attend all of those events. So I did have parental support. I'm not proud of that. I'm also not proud of the fact that in my lifetime, I have had, I don't know how to call it, if it's episodes or incidences where I've been in the company of a Black man, maybe just on the street or in a social setting. And I personally know in my heart that I have experienced the racial bias, and I judged that Black person because of the color of his skin. I'm not proud of that, but I mention that because I want to say this forum is all about creating a safe place for all of us to come to communicate, to gain a better understanding of who we are as a society, why we are here, and really, quite frankly, where we are trying to go together. I am not perfect. I don't think any of the panelists, which are all Eklund Gomes team members, are perfect. This is about us being honest. You can come here to this space. It is judgment free. We just ask that you come with open minds and open hearts. We want people to be able to share, and we don't want anybody to judge. That would really go against everything that this is all about. I just want to talk about Eklund Gomes a little bit. As many of you know, the team expanded recently into cities like Miami and also into Los Angeles. We grew our team in New York, and we're very proud of all the hard work that we did and the success that we are achieving as a result. I mention it because in the process of growing, we were adding new agents and interviewing lots of people. And it struck Julia, our CEO, Julia Spillman, and Frederick and I, that we had a team that was very talented. However, it was very white, admittedly. And we made a conscious decision in the process of growing the team to do the right thing, as Spike Lee said. And we realized that there was somehow injustice in our society that has been going on for, I wouldn't even say decades, for centuries. And somehow we needed to do something to make Black people in real estate more visible, so that other Black people who are young and who are going to school and wanted to enter this community or our industry would have people that looked like them to look up to, so that that would encourage them to too want to become part of our community. We did that before Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter hit, you know, a year or so after that. We were not surprised. I'm also not surprised that we are taking this step, which, by the way, is a very big risk. We have received a lot of backlash for having this very forum with all of you right now. I am not afraid. I want to break down the invitation that you all see in front of you here. Black Lives Matter. Eklund Gomes invites you to join a series to discuss humanity. This is an issue about human rights. This is not an issue about politics. Please don't make it political on our forum. We are not interested. We do not share any of our political views. We come here with open hearts and an open mind to discuss humanity so that we can all gain a better understanding of how we can do a better job to fight racism. There is a huge problem in this country with racism. We're going to get into it throughout the series, and I'm excited to share all of the forthcoming series events with you. I want to tell you, as I just alluded to the fact that we have received a lot of backlash. I'm going to pick up my phone here and just read a couple of things that might actually surprise you guys. See if I go here to what I flagged. I have received several emails. I haven't even told the panelists this. I have received several emails from real estate agents at big firms right here in New York City who are not happy about what we're doing. And I just want to read a couple to you just so that you kind of have a little bit of understanding of what's going on in our industry. Here's one of them, and I won't say who it comes from, but someone says, John, Black Lives Matter, ... except in Chicago, Atlanta, New York, and so on and so forth. Black Lives Matter, ... but this doesn't give them the right to chase my husband and I, both an older white couple, into a store parking lot to start yelling at us. These white folks are all white supremacists. They're racist. And continue screaming until we're surrounded by Black Lives Matter threatening to beat us up unless we apologized. So remove me from your list. And by the way, keep politics out of business. There are so many things wrong with that email. I don't even want to give it much credence, but I just wanted to give it to you as an example to let you know that there are many out there in this very industry that we are working in this very city of New York, that are writing emails like that. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit about the magnitude of the problem. I responded ever so kindly to that individual saying I was happy, very happy to take her off of our list. I wanted to say more. As a matter of fact, I did say more, but I deleted it all because I thought I was going to do the right thing and I was going to be professional. I took the high road and I didn't. So I just pressed send and said, we're happy to get rid of you. This is not a political issue. Really, I can't say that often enough. I can't say it as many times as I possibly can. It is a human rights issue. It's an issue that we all have to deal with. Not just the white, not just the Black people. The Black people are the victims. It's been going on for a long time. We need as a society to come together, really. White people, brown people, Black people, Asian people, wherever you're from in the world, we're all humans. And this is something that we all have to embrace. You don't have to play a huge role, but maybe just listening and learning and opening up your heart, maybe just trying to, you know, do the right thing and understand other people's perspectives, because these are the people that we share the planet with. We have much bigger problems in the world than, you know, this stuff. It's crazy that, you know, that we even have to have this forum. I do want to also reference the New York Times in case you guys didn't see it last week. I believe it was last weekend. Major big story on Black Lives Matter. And what they said is that Black Lives Matter, this was the title, may very well be the largest movement in the history of the United States of America. I say that because I think many people have thought, and I think many people would like to think, that this is a moment in time. But I will tell you, I think that this is the movement of our times, okay? It's a major, major issue. I want to be on the right side of history. I think most of you people want to be on the right side of history, which is why you're taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us today. Of course, as I said to you, there is a risk in doing this, but I think the reward is far greater than any risk that we can possibly take. Racism and racial bias is rampant in our lives, and if you don't experience it, you don't experience it. It doesn't mean that people are not experiencing it. And I want you guys to just come with your open hearts and open minds and appreciate that. It exists everywhere in the world, including our industry of real estate. It's been said many times, and you've read this phrase, but I can't say it enough. Enough is enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So let's get on with this. Let's remember that this is a forum that is judgment-free. I hope that you guys enjoy our series. More importantly, I hope that we can all come together to bring the much needed change. So without further, I'd like to introduce two of our team members. That would be Stephen and Charlie, who are going to talk about Black Lives Matter as a movement and a little bit about the history. Take it away, guys.
John, thank you for that amazing and candid intro. I think to kind of start, we really have to talk about kind of how we got here, how the movement started, and in order to talk about where we're going. The movement actually started as a hashtag. Black Lives Matter started as a hashtag after the acquittal of George Zimmerman, who was a neighborhood watchman in Sanford, Florida, who killed Trayvon Martin, who was a 17-year-old boy visiting his father in Sanford. Trayvon was walking back to his father's place in a gated community after purchasing an Arizona iced tea and Skittles. And essentially, at the time, there was a lot of debate over whether this was justified. You know, I like to be objective in these things, but I'm here to say it was not justified, full stop. Trayvon was stalked. The neighborhood watchman called 911 and was specifically instructed to not engage him. On the 911 call, George Zimmerman claimed that Trayvon was looking in homes and that the bad guys always get away because apparently there were some robberies in the neighborhood. So essentially, George Zimmerman deputized himself, seeing a Black body, and that's how Trayvon Martin ended up dead. His subsequent acquittal, which was under Florida's Stand Your Ground law, is what allowed for this to happen. So subsequently, Black Lives Matter's ultimate mantra became to eradicate white supremacy, and I'm quoting them, eradicate white supremacy, build local power, and intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes. And I really have to repeat that, by the state and vigilantes, referring to Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, and all these tropes in order to discredit movements. We need to make the distinction between what's crime and what is state sanctioned and vigilante violence. More recently, you saw the violence, vigilantism against Ahmaud Arbery. It's really the same thing. In terms of Black Lives Matter's mission statement, they are expansive. They believe that in order to achieve their objectives of Black Lives actually mattering, and I'm quoting, "We believe that in order to win, we must bring as many people possible with us along the way. We must move beyond the narrow nationalism that is all too prevalent in Black communities. We must ensure we are building a movement that brings all of us to the front." So, you know, on John's point, that just doesn't mean Black folks marching. It means bringing white, Black, Native American, Latino, Asian, LGBTQ, and everyone into the fold, and recognizing that there's a problem and it's a systemic problem. Black Lives Matter is intersectional. They affirm the lives of Black, queer, and trans people, that disabled people, those who have records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. Historically, men have been at the forefront of civil rights movements. Black Lives Matter is founded by 3 women who seek to put disabled LGBTQ at the forefront and not just men. it's a rallying cry for liberation for all Black lives is what it really is at the end of the day. And I'm going to let Charlie take it away and talk a little bit more about the origins of BLM.
Thank you, Stephen, for that. As you know, Black Lives Matter began as a call to action against state-sanctioned violence and racism. As I know Stephen has said now twice, it really is that systemic racism that is instilled and state-sanctioned against Black bodies here in America. Where it initially started with Trayvon Martin, it really gained momentum with the Freedom Ride to Ferguson, where Michael Brown, who was an 18-year-old boy living in Ferguson, was murdered by a 28-year-old white male officer. He was shot 6 times in his chest, 12 times in total, while saying, "Hands up, don't shoot." This led to protests, riots, and eventual militarized action from our government. Ferguson really helped to catalyze the Black Lives Matter movement and bring eyes to all the injustices and violence against Black people here in America. I'm going to read you a quote from their website. "We are guided by the fact that all Black lives matter, regardless of actual or perceived sexual identity, gender expression, economic status, ability, disability, religious beliefs, immigration status, or location." So Black Lives Matter is now a global movement. As you've seen on your television, Paris, London, Finland, everywhere. They're shining a light on the injustices, the systemic racism, and the violence against us in this world. And I'm happy to be on this panel. I'm happy that you all are here, part of this conversation, and I'm hoping that we grow along this to understanding and equality.
Thank you, Charlie. And next up, I believe we're going to be having Janet and Susie and Ellis and Nadia and Alan, who are going to talk about Eklund Gomes and how we ended up here having this discussion.
Yeah, so hi everybody, I'm Janet. This discussion really just came from a conversation on, the California and Colorado market. They had I think it's what they call their Monday mojo or morning mojo. And so they had a really deep conversation about Black Lives Matters and, and just the situation that has transpired in the last few months. So from that, John was one of the panelists on that conversation. And I think we were all really just moved, the people that were on that call that had a chance to listen to it. And, we were just moved by how eloquently he spoke about, his passion for really just driving the movement, especially within our industry, and kind of just opening up the doors to be able to have the conversation. So from that, I personally actually reached out to Nadia and Susie, and I was able to have a conversation with them. And that then extended to Charlie and Stephen and other members of our team, Alan. And we were able to have this conversation and say, hey, we should really open this up to our team. Our team is very large, it is diverse. And, let's talk to John and let's see what we can do to kind of keep this conversation going, because we don't want to lose the momentum, right? So I reached out to John and, him, Frederick, Julia, they were just all very supportive about saying, especially John, really pushing the movement and saying we got to do this and we got to do it now. And Nadia can speak to her experience, conversations that she's had with some of our other team members and just really pushing it forward.
Yes, thank you, Janet. So I wanted to bring the point of where we really started this conversation, and that's when John had the Morning Mojo on June 15th. That was shortly after, right in the height of all of this. We had protests, it was on the news, it was in your face every day, but John spoke, and I'm getting emotional talking about it right now, to a point where I was on the Zoom call, but I had to put my video off because I was just so moved from him, not only sharing his experience, but sharing his importance, not only sharing his experience, but sharing his viewpoint and sharing why this is so important for us all to be allies in this. And and I'm sorry, I'm getting, you know, flustered now, but I spoke to Susie, I spoke to Ellis, and we just all were so passionate, and we said we had to bring this to the forefront. We had to bring other real estate agents and the whole community in, because we have to be the leaders and we have to make the change. And Susie or Ellis, I could let you guys take it from here of,
yeah,
especially, yeah.
I'm happy to jump in. So, and Nadia, thanks for being emotional. I'm kind of emotional just being here. I'm really honored to be part of this panel, and I feel a little unworthy, but you know, having the conversations back at the end of May with so many of our team members, those of you who are on the panel and those of you who aren't, it just, it really opened my eyes, and it made me take a step back and wonder, why did it take me this long to feel so emotionally impacted by this? I always knew about racism, but I was definitely admittedly sheltered to it, and hearing the personal experiences that my peers have been through just really opened my eyes. And it was just a matter of, we have to do this. We have to have this conversation. And it's okay to be wrong and to admit that something you believed is incorrect, and it doesn't make you a bad person as long as you're willing to grow. And these guys on this call have helped me with kind of growing in my knowledge of the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, it's just about humanity, like we said in the invite. So I'm honored to be here, and, you know, with the goal of just creating a space where everyone feels comfortable in sharing their experience and their thoughts, you know, throughout the next 8 weeks. And I'll pass over to Ellis.
Okay, thank you, Susie, and thank you, everyone. Nadia, John, everyone, thank you so much. You know, it's really amazing that we're able to do this, and it's a perfect time, you know, finally, that we can have this discussion. I shared with the team earlier internally that I have a Black mama. I might be white skin, light skin, but I have a Black mama. I met Mary when I was in my teens. I ran her state house campaign in North Atlanta when she ran for state house. She ran in a 94% white district, so it was certainly an uphill battle in 2006 when we ran the campaign. And you know, I'm fortunate to say that I have not directly experienced racism like most of the panelists on this Zoom have, but I have experienced it indirectly. And I would say at a very young age, when I was probably old enough to first realize what was happening, you know, we would go out campaigning, and we put out these huge rally signs along the highway, along the interstate, like you see, you know, during any campaign. And unfortunately, those signs were vandalized with racial slurs, you know, in the midst of this campaign. So it was hurtful to me. It was very hurtful to Mary. It was ugly. And as a result, you know, this was long before the Black Lives Matter, and this has just been going on for a long time, and it's finally reached a tipping point in our society. But, you know, as a result at the time, you know, we handled it, I think, in a very professional way. We, you know, had the Atlanta news crews out. We had sheriffs circling her house. And you know, we had the message that this does not reflect our community, that behavior, and we know who did it. But you know, I've experienced it personally, indirectly since that day, and I've lived it. So racism is real. It does exist in many different ways. And, you know, Nadia and I had a conversation when this first kicked off several, you know, about a month ago, following George Floyd's death. And we had a discussion, like John mentioned, about how Blacks in real estate, what is their role? What is what is EG doing? Why do we care? How are we going to change? And I think this is a great opportunity for us to really make a difference for the community and along with our developers and everyone we work with. I think it's an opportunity for us to really shine and excel, and for buyers when they walk into a listing or into a sales gallery, that it's okay for them to see someone who is a different skin tone and who is a dark skin tone and who is Black. So I'm excited to take part in this series. I'm excited to hear everyone's feedback, and it's going to be a very impactful roundtable, and really looking forward to a positive impact and change that we're able to build and not just talk about, but enact in New York City real estate, but across the country.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Alice. And thank you
Can
to
I say a
all...
few words too?
Oh, hi, Frederick.
Hi. Oh, my video is not on. I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. We hear your voice.
Can you see me now?
Oh,
Look at
Yeah.
that.
God, I look so tanned. Wow. Anyway, guys, I just want to add a few words. A lot of what I wanted to say has already been said, but I wanted to add how proud I am of everyone, especially John, but all the team members, the panelists, the entire team, actually. We started discussing this very early on, and from my point of view, it's been such a rewarding experience to discuss this with some of our team members, especially John, my business partner, who's my best friend too. And I get actually also very emotional listening to some of you guys. I grew up in Sweden, which is very different than the United States. And I think after, 17 years here in the US, I understand both cultures, and I can see it a little bit from an outsider's point of view. And I never, ever, ever, ever saw color. I don't still see it. And my cousins are half Black back in Sweden, and Sweden is a funny country because if anything, Blacks in Sweden are like very exotic and beautiful and cool, and like it's not at all. If there's racism in Sweden, it's against other cultures and more, east of Scandinavia. So to me, it was never an issue. But coming to America, and especially, looking inwards and thinking about this hard from a business perspective, but also personal, and talking to John, I actually realized and acknowledged I have so much white privilege, and I thought, I'm a minority, I'm gay, I'm this and that, I'm coming, I don't have a Rolodex, I don't have know anyone in the US. But looking at some of the obstacles and how deep rooted and how strange this whole situation is, it has to stop. And I get very angry, I get very emotional, and I'm really, really proud of as once again a bit of an outsider. I'm here to learn, I'm here to watch. I'm not here to really talk, because I am here to listen and learn from the series, and I can't wait to go through it. And the last thing I'll say, I think it's very well planned of you guys, because it needs to be a series. It needs to be a real deep discussion, like in history, and go back. And people need, like myself, I need to learn to understand where we are today. And I think this is a topic that's so charged and loaded, and people have a lot of opinions, as they should have, but there's never enough time to talk it through. So I think a series like this is the right way to do it. So thank you for organizing it, and I hope we're all going to get out stronger at the end because of it. And now I'm going to take off my camera because I don't look so good today.
Thank you so much, Frederick. I could say so much about what you said, and you made me very emotional, but I guess I'll just say it in 3 words. I love you. Next up, I just want to kind of review some of the topics that we're going to be, tackling and unpacking in the next 8 weeks of our series. Today is the Black Lives Matter, Let's Do Something About It. Really, this is the introduction. We wanted you to get to meet the panelists. We wanted you to understand what it was that we were fighting for and why we think it's so important. Next week is Black Lives Matter, and this is really a 2-part. There's part 1 of the history and part 2 of the history. And in the first one, we're going to be doing part 1, which is pre-civil rights. In the second one, we're going to be doing part 2, which is post-civil rights. I have got to tell you, as a biracial man, and as someone who has experienced racism, as someone who has, you know, a graduate degree in business, and I've had lots of, you know, education in my life, and I'm very grateful, and I feel privileged for that reason. I have to say, wow, my team, these panelists right here, they know their stuff, and they did their homework, and they put it all in front of me and presented it to me in the most compelling way. I was literally left aghast, and you guys are not going to believe the things that they're going to share. And I can't believe the history of racism in this country. And I think when you guys sort of have that perspective, it gives you like a better base level of understanding how we ended up here. And it's important to go back and look at that to understand where we are so that we can then try to figure out where to go. So the session after the history sessions, which is, as I said, are 2 parts, are the human stories. That's living while Black, the human stories. And I don't want to reveal too much about that, but I will give you a sneak peek. I told you I'm a biracial man. I told you I grew up in, you know, upper middle class white neighborhoods. When I was about to enter 10th grade, my family moved to a new town. It was even more white than the last one. And I was me, John Gomes, this color of the skin, I was the token Black person. And they were not cool with that. And I wasn't ready for that. So for many months as a new student, I sat alone eating lunch at a table, a round table for 8, maybe 10 people. And I sat there and I was ridiculed, and I listened to all the whispers underneath people's breath. And then I was the victim of the Oreo cookies. I had Oreo cookies thrown at my head from every direction, left, right, and center. And I didn't understand it at first. I actually didn't realize the symbolic nature of the Oreo cookie, because it just wasn't like in my head, literally and figuratively, although it was in my head. And by the way, I had hair then, so it was kind of annoying, because if you ever had an Oreo cookie thrown at your head, all the like crumbs crumble, and it's not nice. But anyway, that's a little bit of a intro to the human stories of living while Black. The next one is racism in real estate. And I want to point this out. It comes in the middle because it is the biggest point. We need to set it all up, but we need to take that piece right there and unpack it. The whole purpose of Eklund Gomes doing this series for 8 weeks and then a march on Washington is because there is racism within our industry. This is a big problem for many different reasons, and we can go on and off on tangents in many different directions. We have chosen at Eklund Gomes and the panelists here to discuss the racism in real estate. That's what we want to change. We don't want to we want to have a narrow focus to actually affect change within our industry. So that's very important. And then after that, it's basically, once we identify the fact that there is indeed racism in real estate, we will give you that evidence because we have personal stories on that too. We will then talk about where we go from here. And we want to talk about that as a roundtable discussion with everybody who wants to participate, so that we together, now that we have all the history and we understand that there is a problem, can figure out where to go. Okay, we now established the problem. Well, what do we do with that? Once we decide what we are going to do with that, the next one is where Black Lives Matter, how to implement change. This is how we're going to take the previous week's work and we're going to say, okay, these are the solutions. This is what we need to do. Now we're going to talk about how to implement those ideas and how we're going to implement that in order to affect change. And from there, we're going to have a Black Lives Matter rally preparation, because there is a Black Lives Matter rally that is in Washington, D.C. It is on August 28th, and I predict it is going to be one of the biggest, largest, most heavily attended rallies that the United States of America has ever seen. We are going, and we will be a huge part of it. We will very proudly raise our flags and wear our t-shirts, and we will shout our voices loud. We will be very respectful. We do not condone violence. We do not at all support anyone ever being injured whatsoever. We will be peaceful in our protests. We will be respectful of all people's lives in an attempt to bring attention to the Black lives that matter. So that is our introduction, folks. As always, we wanted this to be a forum for discussion and a roundtable. It's difficult to do that these days as we have to Zoom because we can't all be together. So we left a little bit of time in our series now for questions. And we'd like to field those questions from you guys. If you have any questions, you can send them our way. You can text them directly into us. And Ellis, who is here, is our host. He's going to be fielding those questions to us. So Ellis, if there are any questions that have come in already, you can certainly read those to me now. But I also had a short list of questions that we might want to talk about as well. So you let me know if there's any that you have now. Otherwise, I'll go into my list.
Okay, perfect. We do have a few questions that have come in, and also for everyone tuning in, if you do have a question, please raise your hand, and I'm happy to allow you to speak so we can make this an open roundtable for the panelists and everyone participating. So first, John, we had a question come in, and that is, how does Eklund Gomes promote diversity in its workplace?
Eklund Gomes promotes diversity in its workplace just like this. I'm looking at my screen and I see the bottom of my screen and I see a beautiful rainbow of color. And it is the diversity to me. I think there's no better way than to promote diversity by having the best agents who are a beautiful, diverse group of people that have a skill, just like others who are in the industry, who are having success at what they're doing. The best way to promote the diversity is to put your agents out there in a diverse way. In addition to that, we are sponsoring series such as this, because this is hopefully going to encourage other people, other team leaders, other executives, other people within the executive suite level and C-suite level of real estate firms in this city. We're hoping to encourage them to look at themselves very carefully and closely, and look at how diverse or not diverse they are in an attempt to become more diverse.
I just want to add as well, which has less to do with maybe Eklund Gomes, but more with me and John. You know, I have this TV show for 10 years on Bravo, and there's been some discussions around this, but I think it's important to point out, I have told the network and pushed the network, actually found the network a couple of candidates, and there's so many of very strong Black professional amazing real estate agents. And, you know, I think a show like that needs to be representative of New York. And, you know, it's been a very male oriented show, and thank God we have women coming now. But, you know, I think that that's another way that we can also help getting this message out.
Ellis, did you have another question?
Yep. Next question, and this is open, is do you have a dream?
That's a loaded question. Do we have a dream? I think we all have a dream. And by the way, we got to give mad props here to Martin Luther King, who has done some very good work and, you know, lost his life as a result of it. We have to look back on these people. And by the way, we will touch upon that in the history section, you know, in great detail, actually. But yes, I have a dream. My dream is coming true right here in front of you. Quite frankly, I am like so emotional. I don't know if you guys can tell if you know me, but in my voice, I am sitting here in front of you, so proud. I sit here in front of you with all kinds of emotions and feelings. It's so sad that we have to do this. And I almost can't believe it. It feels so surreal. But at the same time, I feel like Eklund Gomes has always been a leader in this industry on many different topics. And this one is no different. I think that we should all concern ourselves with social issues, especially when they are social issues that concern people, you know, who are being discriminated against or experiencing racism or racial bias simply because they were born Black. Someone said something earlier about, you know, Black people. Frederick was saying it. I just don't I'm never ever going to understand it. I just think that, you know, diversity is such a beautiful thing. I think it's how we learn and grow from one another. I'll never understand what it is about Black people that racists don't like. Because I look at Black people and I think, yes, they're Black. And look at that beautiful, sumptuous, glowing skin. Look at like, there's so much beauty to be seen. There's such a rich history of Black people, and you know, the lives that they lived and the places that they've come from. And I just don't understand how or why people don't appreciate it. But here we are, living my dream, having this discussion, the first of a series of 8 that will culminate with a march on Washington. I'm living my dream. Thank you to all of you for being a part of it.
Next question, why does our society seem to push against discussing the topics of racism and equality?
Anybody on the panel want to take that?
Racism is always a very uncomfortable discussion. It's how society is built that, you know, all you have to do is just say like, I'm not racist. And actually, you know, for a very long time, when we practice saying that we don't see color, that's something, it's supposed to mean, you know, that I see you eye to eye. But more and more lately, saying that you don't see color is kind of just rightfully, you know, overlooking or taking, not seeing the person for who they are, not having empathy. So it's an uncomfortable conversation, but what we're trying to do with this panel is we're trying to make everybody get more comfortable in it. Hopefully everybody that joins and follows us for this 8-week series would be able to see how easy it is to just join that conversation.
By the way, I want to call something out here. And look, this is all happening live and it's happening in real time, and we're not making any judgments. However, it was just a couple of moments ago that Frederick said, in a very loving way, I don't see color. And I hear that phrase often, and it kind of strikes me as a little bit odd, and I understand where it's coming from.
No, that's not what I said. I said when I grew up, I never saw color because
no, that's what I mean.
You know, but here I definitely see, I see it everywhere, and I see, you know, I acknowledge, and that's what I said. I acknowledge that I have a lot to learn, and I have so much privilege that I have not thought of, and I need to acknowledge that and learn more. That's what I meant.
Exactly, and but that's what I was saying. I'm sorry that if I wasn't clear. I meant as you were growing up, as you said, in Sweden, how you didn't see color. And when you said that, what I was about to say is, I hear a lot of people say this term or phrase, I'm colorblind. And I just want to say, hey, I hear you, and there are many of my white friends who have made that statement. And I just want to say, because this is a safe place and the forum to say it, that you should see color. We should all see color, because that's the beauty of the world that we live in. We're all unique, we're all different, and we are all different colors. And, you know, it's a beautiful thing. So I think when people say it, a lot of people, they don't mean to say it in a negative way, but it's one of those things where we all kind of just learn things from one another. And moving forward, I think it's good to celebrate color and not be, quote, color blind, because I think the color and the difference is beautiful. That's what I meant, Frederick. Sorry if I was not clear.
I love it. Thank you.
I love you.
If I can jump in here on that question too, you know, I've been really open with my panelists here about, I've never discussed racism in a public setting like this. And I don't know why it's something that we're, you know, uncomfortable talking about. I think it's just something we haven't been kind of brought up discussing, and it's like, well, why? So, you know, as uncomfortable as we feel, that's why we're having this conversation. Like, I'm honoring that feeling of getting uncomfortable, because I want to say what I'm thinking so that I can get feedback on that and learn if what I'm feeling is valid or if I need to kind of readjust my thinking. So, you know, maybe it feels uncomfortable, but we clearly need to feel uncomfortable right now. So I think we gotta kind of embrace that feeling.
I agree.
Team, next question is, why is it important to feel comfortable having these open conversations?
I'll take that. You have to be uncomfortable in order to grow. No one ever really grows in comfortability. So you have to get uncomfortable first till you get comfortable with it. And that way, once it becomes something that's part of your vernacular, something that you're comfortable talking about, it'll be easier to have a conversation with people and open up and say, okay, why do you think this way? Instead of immediately getting angry or just shutting down and saying, oh, I don't want to talk about that because it's uncomfortable. The more you speak about it, the more you'll get comfortable with it, and the more it won't be a touch point of like contention for people. I know a lot of people are afraid of saying the wrong thing, and you're going to say the wrong thing and people are going to be offended, but it's about having the safe space to feel comfortable, to have that conversation so that people know you're here, it's fine, we want to talk to you, and we want to understand where you're coming from, and we want you to see where we're coming from so we can eventually get to this position of equality for everyone.
Well said.
Well, it's also uncomfortable for the simple reason that if you believe in hate and you believe in superior versus inferior, and you believe that, you know, in this whole very wrong system, and that helps you, then it's going to be very uncomfortable to change that. And you're not going to be willing to do that because it's not going to help you in a very selfish way. It'll help other people. And that's something you have to have I think a spiritual discussion with God, or with, you know, your peers and your loved ones and your family, what's right or wrong. And I think we all do know when we ask ourselves deep inside what is right. But it's not, you know, for a lot of people, especially, you know, to Susie's point, if you're not exposed to it and you're not willing to change, it's going to be super uncomfortable. And that's why it's needed.
Yeah.
Next, we'll hop over to Jonathan Brown, who has a question from the audience.
So, good evening, panelists. My name is Jonathan. So I'm currently a United States Marine, and in light of recent events, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, who is the 4-star general who runs the Marine Corps, directed that we have guided leadership discussions within the Marine Corps, which oftentimes involved us having, just like we were talking about with the early questions, some uncomfortable conversations. So some of them were mandated, quote unquote. Some of them were just because we felt that they needed to be had. But I guess my question is like, what is your organization done to have those, to open up the floor to those kind of conversations? And then how do you continue those conversations once you get past the quote unquote mandated, you know, requirements?
Yeah, so I think what our team is doing is exactly what we are all doing together right now. And as I said earlier, I truly believe that, you know, this is not a moment in time, but really it's the movement of our times. This is not going to change, and this is not going to go away. And I myself personally am not going to stop talking about it. I finally reached a point in my life where this has always been in the background of our lives. And somehow, I don't know how I lived all this time in my life where I just sort of have been accepting it, kind of like quietly living through life every day, knowing that I read these stories in the paper and that I see these stories on the news. I'm done. Like, it's over now. I'm done. And I have had enough. And it's just, I reached the tipping point. And I realize and recognize that Eklund Gomes, because we are leaders in the industry, we have a platform, people are looking at what we're doing. I hope, because of our platform, that we are going to get people to start paying attention to this and maybe look at it more seriously and change the way that they think about it, and ultimately the way that their organizations react as well. So this is what we're doing. It's the beginning, and it's going to go on for these 8 weeks, and we're going to go to that March, but we're going to come back. And it doesn't mean when we hit September and we go into the fall market, this is not going to still be with us. It is. As I said to my team, who knows what will come of this? I can only imagine that there are going to be so many side conversations that people are going to have with us, and so much feedback that we're going to get, so many emails, so many texts, so much support. Who knows where this goes next? I hope that it eventually goes away, but we are here to stay until it does.
I think it's important to also just mention that, you know, we all, you know, collectively decided to do this. It wasn't mandated. You know, it wasn't a thing where it was like, oh, you know, we have to do this. We collectively decided, and we had individual conversations as well as together, and just decided to come together and do something about it. And like John said, like, we're hoping that we know that this conversation definitely within our team and hopefully within the industry and beyond won't stop here. So.
Thank you for your question, Jonathan.
Yep, thank you for hosting the panel.
It's our duty, really. I mean, I just want to say to that, by the way, the panelists that you see in front of you, you should really commend them, because not everyone is comfortable putting themselves out there, being on a screen like this and publicly making these statements. It just is, it's something that these panelists here, even though they're not comfortable, some of them, they are coming out of their comfort zone because they just feel like they have to, because they've had enough. So I really want to commend every single solitary one of you for the work that you have put into this. And guys, I hope that you see in our future, in the future sessions, there's so much research that goes into all of this, and we really want to get it right. And you're going to see that this has been a huge commitment on the part of these panel members of this team to share this message with all of you in the hopes that we can actually change the way that people think about racism in the real estate industry.
Great. Team, next question is, what is the difference between being anti-racist versus saying that you're not a racist?
I have to think about that question. What is the, can you repeat it? What is the difference between being anti-racist and
versus saying that you're not a racist?
Well, I could start with that, and other people can follow. You know, very often we look at racism as an ugly word. We feel that if somebody calls us a racist, like, you know, you're telling me that I'm a bad person. Whereas I think in the 8 weeks to come, we're going to cover and expose how we all have these innate biases, and that's what we're trying to overcome. So when we say, I think being anti-racist is having a conscious effort to go against racism, to, when somebody says a funny joke at, or not funny joke, at a table, instead of laughing it off or kind of like, you know, shooing it to the side, you could, you know, tell them like, this is wrong. Because it's only through anti-racism that we're really gonna see true change in the society. You know, let anybody else add to it.
I completely agree. I think there's as well some similarities with homophobia, because I think that similarly, you know, the world is changing, and similarly just 10, 20 years ago, everybody was doing like gay jokes and everyone was chuckling, and there's a lot of people now that say that's not okay. I mean, straight men are saying, no, that's not funny anymore. You know, I think I'm a good example of what you just maybe said, that I was definitely never a racist, but now I have become, because of this discussion, because of this movement, because me listening more to what my colored peers are going through and have gone through, completely unknown to me, I am anti-racist.
I just want to share a speech that's one of the most powerful and moving speeches that I ever did hear or read. And this man is a hero of mine. His name is Elie Wiesel, and he's a Holocaust survivor. And he wrote a book, and many books actually, but one of the books was called Night. And I was in undergrad at the time. And I read the speech, and really it talks about, I remember this one line, it says, silence encourages the tormentor, and never the tormented. So you have to understand, some people choose to just be silent. They just don't say anything. But the silence is what is deafening, and it's killing our society, because we have to, as individuals within a society, speak up for what we know is right. And we have to speak out against those things like racism. We can't just, you know, say, oh, I'm not racist, and then not do anything about it, because racism is prevalent in our society. And we as individuals in that society have to say something and stand up and do what is right, because if we don't, then we're only giving power to those people who are tormenting people. And that's just not right. So it just takes all of us stepping up and doing something and saying something. Silence is, the worst thing that can ever happen. Just like inaction in the real estate market, right? When there's like buyers move to the sideline and nothing is really happening, nothing gets done. It's the same thing with silence. Nothing gets done on these social issues, and people still, perpetuate these problems that have been going on for centuries.
Just to continue on that, it's about using, John, like what you said, using your voice to show up for us in rooms that we're not represented in. Use your voice, use your privilege, use your body, use everything that you can, because inside of that, that's how we're going to get ahead. There's certain rooms that we're just never going to get into. And if you are an ally, an anti-racist, in those rooms, you can represent for us. And that's really, for me, what it's about as well.
And just to chime in on that too, I think I've heard a few quotes. This isn't just about speaking up now. Like, this is a decision for our lives, our children's lives, passing on the fact that you're not going to stand by and listen. This is going to be, it's not just when the buzz dies down. It's about speaking up for the rest of your lives. So I know we're all committed to that here.
Yeah, and part of what you're saying, and you just mentioned children, I'm hearing my children wake up from their 2-hour nap upstairs now. My children, they are a huge motivator for me in all of this. I have, for those of you who don't know, 2.5-year-old twins. And I just think this whole Black Lives Matter thing, it's not going away, and it's definitely going to make its way to the history books. And one day my children are going to be old enough to understand that this existed. I, as a parent, want to be able to say to my children, I fought for that. I did exactly what I'm doing with all of my panelists right now. We went to Washington and we marched for Black Lives Matter. I need to be able to do that in order to be able to say that to my children. And I think that we should all maybe think about that, because we got to be on the right side of history. Eventually, we're going to get this right. And I just think it's better to be on the right side of history.
And we'll make it a better place for your children and everyone else.
Yes. Thank you, Ellis.
Next, we'll hop over to Joao from the audience. Are you there?
Yes, hi. I am. Thank you. Make just a quick statement. Well, first of all, in all transparency, I'm John Gomes' cousin. Hi, John.
Hi there.
How are you? So for me, like, growing up with racism, it was prevalent like everywhere. It was part of my life, and we really got used to it, right? And it was just the way it was. For me personally, it wasn't until 2003 when I went to travel to the home country where I was born and my parents were born, where on Cape Verde Islands, and first saw people of color, Black people, African, West African people, like running a country, the doctors, the police, the nurses, the store owners, where when I came back to the United States, it gave me a much different perspective. And like, wait a minute, why don't we have similar roles here or the same opportunities? And why are we looked down upon in the United States where we're very capable of doing a lot more? So John, we had our recent trip in January to the Cape Verde Islands. How has that changed your view or motivated you to where you're at today after having that experience?
Yeah,
did you have a similar
question. Yeah, I mean, guys, my father is Black. He comes from the Cape Verde Island. It's a small country made up of several islands off the western coast of Africa. I'm almost embarrassed to say that it took me all these years to get there, but when I got there, I got the message, and it was loud and it was very clear. And I saw these children, Black children, running through the streets, and they all had no shoes and no socks and torn and tattered clothes and dolls that were hand-me-downs from children that had those toys handed down to them in America from their cousins and sisters and brothers. And then they finally shipped them in a container, and they ended up in Cape Verde with one eye and one leg and maybe a little bit of tattered hair. And they played with these toys like they were brand new and fresh out of the box because they have nothing. Those children, looking into their eyes, I just found a motivation and a beauty. And maybe some of you follow me on Instagram. If you don't, it's John Gomes, no space in between. You can look at my feed and you'll see the beautiful tribute that I made to those children who inspired me. I just took all these photos. I couldn't stop taking these photos of them, but you'll see they inspired me. So it's all of my experiences in life have led me to this, but that was one of the most recent experiences that is very real and is in my heart for many different reasons. And yes, that is a motivator and one of the motivators for how I ended up doing this today. We have now reached 3:30, and I said to my team, I never want this to go for more than 1 hour. I know that we can continue to discuss, and there are many more questions that will come. I just want to end it here, and I want to stick to that rule of ending at 3:30. That doesn't mean that we cannot have sidebar conversations. You can email me, you can DM me, you can call me if you want to talk about things, and we can set up a lunch, and there are going to be many opportunities for everyone here on this panel to take these conversations to the next level. But until then, let's take it until next week. It's the same station, it's the same time, and the topic is going to be history lesson number 1, pre-civil rights, Black Lives Matter. We love you guys. It's over and out from Eklund, Gomes, wherever you are. Thank you for your support. We will see you next week. Much love and big kiss.
Thank you everybody for coming. Bye.